May 22nd, 2022. Shane, we're live. This is our second episode in 2 weeks.
Who said this was going to be an hour? I'm just looking at the Twitter feed from DLF. Unacceptable.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know how long we're going to go. We're probably going to go as long as people are willing to ask questions, which we've already had some that have rolled in. But before we get there, how you doing? I know this is only the, second time we've talked today and probably the 20th time we've talked in the last week or so. But yeah, how you doing today? How's your morning? How's your afternoon? How's
Good
your
day.
life?
Oh, great. Everything's great. Got all my Sunday chores done. You know what I mean? Did a little meal prep for the week and, all that exciting stuff in life.
Yeah, well, I'm speaking of the life. I did have somebody on Friday. Of course, it happened on Friday night, but we're driving on home from the store, and somebody hits my side mirror, and just boom, mirror to mirror. And of course, I'm sitting here just with the windows down, and of course, the entire mirror and glass just right in my eyes, right in my face. So luckily, I didn't have any like permanent damage, but it definitely was a wake up call. So yeah, get to deal with that. Get to deal with the repair shop, and tried to get a rental car, and they're like, oh yeah, they're not going to be available for at least 4 or 5 days.
You got to do Turo. Go. It's an app. Turo. I just rented a car from them for a goddamn month because my car was in the shop for over a month. $5,000 worth of damage. I only had to pay $650. Shout out to insurance. But yeah, use Turo. It's you rent it from a person. It's cheaper.
Well, I mean, the thing is, like, I work for an insurance company, so I know the entire process. I streamlined it. I'm insured with the company that I work for, so it was pretty straightforward. So I know all the tricks of the trade. I know exactly how all of it's going to work and stuff. But I get to the rental car place on Saturday morning, and they're just like, "Yeah, man, we don't have any cars." I'm like, "Well, does anybody have any cars?" And now they're like, "No, you have to wait till sometime this week." But the one good thing is, I did get. I had my wife record the other person basically admitting fault. It was one of those accidents where we're both passing like parked cars on the right side of each of us, and so both of us kind of go towards the middle, and it's really hard to say who was at fault. You know what I mean? Like probably both of us could have waited or been less aggressive to go, and the other person maybe would have waited and let the other person pass. But got to recorded him at the scene of saying, "Oh yeah, you were in my blind spot," and I cut off the recording. So we'll see if it ends up working out in my favor. But anyway, yeah, that's been one of the things I've been dealing with this weekend. So yeah, anything new in your life that you want to share with everybody? I know we kind of got personal there, but
no. I got like I said, I got my car back on Friday. That was exciting and it was a wonderful feeling.
Well, let's see. We spent 3 minutes talking about like personal life and car, which
Sorry,
that's not why people have tuned into Manic and Show. So
we apologize. When we timestamp this, I'll just tell Addison to cut out the first 3 minutes.
No, it just shows we're actual humans and we're not just YouTube robots like people think.
I'm actually a bot. I don't know about you. I actually am a bot.
You definitely are not. You definitely are not. All right. Where you want to start?
All right. We got lots of questions. Got questions in the chat, questions on the what do you call that? The Twitter. But let's start with the chat because these folks showed up. You know what I mean? No disrespect to the people that didn't. Slow down, guys. Let's type these slowly. Jackson's Corner. I can't put the questions up, by the way. You have to do that.
Yeah, I'm going to do it. Let's go. Yeah. I'll put them up. You shout them out. Jackson's Corner, would you trade the 107 302 for a 23 first? Yes, I think there's no questions. I don't care about the format. Yes.
Unless Wilson's fallen, because he's my wide receiver one, and he has fallen in some league drafts. So
Shane.
I know. So
let's deconstruct this. Let's pretend like I actually like the 302 a little bit too. Like that's a nice throw-in pick range. So let's remove the 302. Are you trading a 23 first for Garrett Wilson?
Not one that's in my pocket. No.
So what's the logic there? You just said you would not do it if
it's easier when I already own something to hold on to it than it is to give it up. If I have the 23 first and not the 107 because of what's that called? I own it bias. I think that's
it's called the endowment effect. Everything you have, it's in your possession is worth more than the same thing if it's in somebody else's house or possession.
I own it bias. But the correct answer is yes, you should trade the 107 and the 302 for a 23 first. You shouldn't be biased like me and go, well, Garrett Wilson's my wide receiver one of the class, so I'm taking him.
So Let me
Luckily, though,
ask you this.
you're probably looking at Jameson Williams and or Sky Moore.
Well, so here's my question. Do you think, regardless of the players that are available, even though you're maybe a little more biased on like you like Jameson Williams, you like Garrett Wilson, you don't like Kenneth Walker, you don't like Kenny Pickett, do you like just giving up one for one, even if it's a 23 first? We
No.
know the liquidity of a 23 first. We know the goal behind the 23 first is not that you're going to pick a better receiver than Garrett Wilson. It is that you have 6 months from now, maybe longer, depending on how long your league's trade deadline goes, or if you follow Shane and I, there is no trade deadline. You have all that time to maybe get a better deal than Garrett Wilson. But I think the most important thing is you don't have to pick Garrett Wilson today. You have 7 months to kind of wait and see what happens. Preseason, training camp, first month of the season. You can kind of see what you want to spend it on. You don't have to commit to it right now. That's the difference. If you're on the clock, though, like, are you somebody that would make that kind of trade if you could get Garrett Wilson plus a throw-in running back or something like that, or maybe a future third, or you know what I mean? Like, if you can get the 2 for 1, are you willing to do that? Is that what you're looking for, or how would you make that work?
I'm probably going to try to get more than the 302, to be quite honest with you. 201, 202, because if I could come out of this with Rashad White, I'd feel a lot better. It's probably still a really bad process, but that's okay. Sometimes I like to just have fun and draft players. So, sometimes I just want to win, Scott.
Okay, you've alluded to that before, though, that like if you would be able to trade for 2 picks inside the desirable range that you like, then you would consider giving up a 23 first.
Yeah.
So it's like if you can get Garrett Wilson or whoever the receiver is you want to pick plus another shot at like a top 15 player, that's when you would need to do it. But it's not probably good process to trade in to draft at the 10. Even somebody today asked me, do you want to send, we drafted Drake London, and it was like, do you want to send Drake London for a 23 first? And I think a lot of people would say that's not bad. He was the wide receiver 1 for most, top 4 pick pretty much every draft. But I'm like, you know what? No, let's go for a throw-in player on top of that. You know what I mean? Like, even if I know I'd rather have the 23 first straight up, there's no harm in asking for an additional piece, whether that's an additional running back, additional receiver, additional future pick. But I think that's where the leverage is, if you can get 2 outcomes instead of 1.
Well, then, we had a trade like that today, myself and you, where I was just trying to get a player off you. Didn't really care who it was. You brought him up first in the trade offer, and then I said, you know what? That's not a bad lotto ticket. Just I want him in the deal.
Yeah, well,
it was enough
Nick
to
asked us
scuttle
a
it.
question. Nick asked us a question. What type of deals have you made where you sent a 23 first? And I was just thinking about that before you even brought it up. Shane and I actually did one today where I actually gave up a 23 first, which is shocking. And I'll ask Shane to kind of share maybe one of his deals where he's given one up. But what was the deal? It was 23 first and a 23 second, right?
Yes.
For Trevor Lawrence, Marlon Mack, and then I had to throw in basically 2 players to balance out the rosters because it was one of those trade won't go through unless we even up the numbers, and it would have put me over the roster limit. So I gave you Amir Smith-Marset, which you'll hold until you have somebody better, which is probably like a couple weeks, and then you'll drop them.
Week 2.
But Danny Gray, was Danny Gray somebody like that you actually are interested in seeing what happens with him in the preseason and going into the beginning of the year?
No, that dude's strictly a lottery ticket. That's why I was so adverse when you were trying to get Wan'Dale Robinson from me, because he's also a lottery ticket, and I wasn't trying to give you any of my lottery tickets. I expect really nothing from Danny Gray. If there would have been any other wide receiver like that on your roster, and you had started with them, I probably would have tried to make sure that I got them.
So to answer Nick's question, any other trades that you have sent a 23 first for, and what do they look like just from like a form perspective?
Oh, yeah. Let me, look, I'm in a few leagues, so I don't really remember trades that well. I did this one. I gave up a 2023 first for a 2023 first, 2023 second, 206, 403, and got the 110 and the 111 in this draft. And then I drafted, and this is obviously why we were on the clock, then I drafted James Cook and Jahan Dotson.
I hate it.
Yeah, I'm sure you would.
I like the other side. I'm sitting here thinking, like, when is the actual player that I would give up anything close to a 23 first for going to come in? And then you say James Cook and Jahan Dotson. So
Well,
but
look,
that's similar to what you said before, right? If you can get 2 shots in the range you like,
right.
then you'll do it.
And partly, look, I'll admit it. I did James Cook on the rookie DLF rookie update series, whichever version this is, the third one that we do. And I fell a little bit in love with James Cook while I was writing him up and watching his tape. So definitely don't do write-ups on players before you start trying to trade for them. Not a great idea.
Yeah, I mean, anytime you can get to the Shane Manila tape analysis, you got to follow that. Go with your gut. So here's one. Sam. Sam says 223 first projected high for Najee Harris 12-team Superflex. Projected high. I don't really like the sounds of that. Not because I don't like Najee. I actually think Najee is a guy I want to buy a share or two before the season. But to projected high, I think there's going to be. I don't want to move both of them for one player. I think that's limiting your outcomes, like we talked about. You know what I mean? Like I think there's going to be a shot if I have a top 5 or better pick, at least from what the league looks like. You know, once you get into the season and it's clear that these 2 picks are non-playoff picks, I just feel you can get more bang for your buck just trading one of them away and be able to keep the other one and still have a top 6 pick next year. You can probably buy some running back production close to Najee for cheaper, don't you think? And I mean, would you do it?
No,
Yeah,
I would
I don't
not.
think so.
No. We were looking at trades where we were talking with one of our patrons where people were talking about Aaron Jones and a 23 first for Najee. Like, I don't even think I'd do that, to be quite honest with you.
No, I'd take see, those are the perfect kind of deals where I don't even care who the running back is. You know what I mean? If you can get even one
if I'm on
year
the get side, yeah. But I don't think I'm giving up now. Or actually, I don't think I'm trading for Najee, giving that package up.
No, I'm saying if you can hack your way to maybe just 1 year of a top 8 running back, which I think Aaron Jones is positioned very well to do that this year, and you get a 23 first, I'm willing to take my chances that if I can get a top 12 season under Aaron Jones and pocket a 23 first, I think it'd be a debate if it's Jonathan Taylor, but I think even process-wise, it's hard for me to turn down that type of deal given the clout that the 23 first carry. You know what I mean?
I'm not giving up 223 first for Najee Harris. If someone offers me that, we are not friends anymore.
Well, but we were talking about this the other day. Like, it seems like on our Patreon Zoom chat on Friday, it kind of seems like it's really hard to move 223 first for like any running back. You know, like it just feels like your range of outcomes are very slim on your side. The team with the picks is going to have a lot more flexibility and opportunity, I think.
It's kind of hard because we're all picturing that we're going to get Jahmyr Gibbs and Bijan Robinson. So when you picture those two out of your lineup for Najee Harris, you're going, well, I don't like this outcome at all. I don't like this even a little bit, which is probably the right way you should do it because Najee Harris is a running back. And like you were saying, John Taylor is the only one I can imagine giving up 223 firsts for. And I don't know if I could actually pull the trigger. And I also don't think that would be enough to get him from another manager.
Well, and yeah, I think the biggest thing isn't the 2 players you're going to have to pick. I mean, that's great next year if you end up picking 2 running backs. I think it's, the macro bet that I've made on acquiring all these 23 firsts over the last 2 years hasn't been that I'm going to pick all the players in 23, right? We've talked about this many times. It's what am I going to be able to do, especially if I'm holding 2 picks. So I'm holding an extra first, not just mine, but I'm holding an extra one. What am I able to do with that over the next 6 months? And I don't have to spend it now. You know what I mean? I can wait for a team or two during the year that starts off 0-4 and they go, oh man, I wish I really didn't have Aaron Jones and Nick Chubb on my roster. I need to get rid of these guys because I don't want to go into another offseason where I'm carrying 2 running backs that are 27 years old. So they may come to you and be like, hey, you're one of the few teams that has multiple picks and is in the market to buy. What do you want? Give me one of those 23 first. Give me the one that looks like it's going to be the 102. You know what I mean? And my goal is going to be, okay, you have Aaron Jones and Nick Chubb. Give me both. And maybe I'll throw in a lottery ticket, like you said. Maybe I'll throw in a second. Maybe I'll throw in a injured player or something like that. But my goal is to be like, I'm not taking a 1-for-1. I want the 2 guys, and I want it in the midst of them. They've already avoided injury. They're already showing that they're smashing during the year. I kind of have you, kind of by the strings there. You know what I mean? Like I'm the one in control because I have the picks. You need to get rid of these running backs. That's what I envision. It may not work that way in every league. It probably takes the right league and the right managers.
Well, what's going to happen is people they're going to send out multiple offers trying to get a single first for a single one of those running backs.
Right.
and then just everyone's going to turn him down because half the league's going to go, I'm not in it. I'm not close enough. I'm not giving up a 23 first. He's probably going to be better than whoever I'm trading for from you anyway. So, yeah, they're going to be forced to say, do I really want to swallow these two running backs, or do I want to carry them on my roster for another year? Like, what's any way you look at it, it's not great. But, and this is what I'll pitch to them, at least if you're trading me the old running backs, you were going to wind up trading them at a loss next year anyway. At least you get to freshen up your roster. And again, you have the fungible asset in the 23 pick.
Well, and this is something we talked about too on the Zoom chat, was that I think this year you're going to see, and I've already started seeing it in leagues, and maybe you have too. I'll let you chime in. I think I've already started to see teams that are already punting. They're not even willing to negotiate trading their picks already. So they're entering the season. There's 1, 2, maybe 3 teams in the league that are entering the season already with the goal, I'm going for that 101. I'm going for that 102. So their pick is almost off the table. Like, they're not even going to entertain trading for a player unless it is an insulated asset where they're like, okay, I'll give up my 101 next year, but you need to give me like Justin Jefferson. You know what I mean? Like, and those teams are not going to really be in the mix when you're trying to get value for your 23 picks that you have pocketed. Those teams are not going to be the ones that you're going to be contending with. They're already off the board. They've probably already made themselves known. I mean, how many times have you sent out random offers for a 23 first, and the person has responded with, I'm just not trading my pick?
Way too many times, and I find it downright obnoxious.
But the fact they've showed their hand already, right? And you look at their team, and they're like, you know what? I'm just not in. Unless you blow me away, I'm not really interested in moving that pick.
Let's see what happens when the season starts, right? The season,
yep.
once we got a shot at a title, once you start looking at the playoffs, you have a shot at the playoffs. I think the arithmetic changes a little bit. Now,
Sure.
Obviously, it's not going to be the guys that are or gals that are shooting for that 5, 6 seed. I don't think they're going to go all out. But if I'm 1 through 4. I'll be strategic. I'm not just going to willy-nilly give anyone that 23 first or 2, but I'm definitely not going to be afraid to trade it because I'll take the free year next year after winning a title, even if I don't get to draft one of the greatest classes of all time.
Yep.
Or like some people tell you can just trade in anyway and get it some other time.
A couple shout outs. Corey Dean, thank you. Manic and Chill does live. Yep. We live and we're live.
So and we're live.
Hit both. Ryan McDowell in the house. Appreciate it.
It's our guy.
A couple other ones. Here's one. We had a trade question that came in on Cortland Sutton. Let me find it. Here it is. Sutton in a 23 second for 108 and 112, 1 QB. So you're probably talking about like George Pickens, Christian Watson, Jahan Dotson, Sky Moore, James Cook. Say you get 2 of those guys. Do you do it for Sutton in a 23 second?
The only way I'm doing that is if I get specifically Sky Moore and James Cook, and I won't. Not at 108 and 112.
Okay,
not from what I've seen on rookie ADP.
Okay,
I don't even like Sutton.
Well, let's just say you take James Cook at 108, which I think there's a good chance you get him there. But then you can take whatever receiver falls. So it's Pickens, Watson, or
right. Yeah, then I'm fine with it.
Okay, so it's kind of like
because the receiver is going to be as questionable as Sutton is, quite frankly. It's that first piece that's. If that first piece I'm starting off with is Jahan Dotson and the second one is Christian Watson, I got a pretty good chance of going 0 for 2 there. At least that's how I look at it.
So for you, it would be more of I'd probably be targeting 108 would be where I'd want to take James Cook because I know I'm going to probably get Pickens, Watson, or Dotson at the 112 most likely because someone else may reach on a running back or something like that. So it's close. I think the other thing is the second rounders, especially in 1 QB, but the second rounders in 23 are not necessarily more valuable than the second rounders in 2022. I think there's going to be probably a firm drawing line where similar to what 2021 was, where it's like, not that the class isn't going to be good, but I'm not going to look at the 206 next year because it's a good class and say that's better than the 206 this year. Because I actually really like the mid rounds this year. You know what I mean? Like there's a lot of actually intriguing profiles and stuff in this year's class that may not exist in future. So I don't necessarily think the 23 second is anything more than just window dressing here. Let's see. Any others that stood out to you? We got a lot of questions. Here was one. Good question from our boy Justin Rogers. Let me find it. He posted on 2024 first. So we're going to assume Superflex, but where's your cutoff to where you'd move for a 2024 first?
Rookie picks, players.
I'll answer it in rookie picks. I've spammed when I've gotten to like the 110-ish, 111-ish for 2024 first, and I have not been able to get one deal.
Yeah.
So I think it might be league to league, but I also don't think that it's a guarantee that even if you trade a pick, you're going to pick Christian Watson or Jahan Dotson with, I don't know if you can even get a 2024 first, which just tells me that the community as large is getting smarter.
And would you want to? Where do you really want to? Like, I know 2024 is a long time away, and there's that whole money today is worth more than money tomorrow, whatever. There's some kind of economic equation to that or whatever. But when the money today is risky, it's like Ethereum. You know what I mean? Like, I'm moving up to draft Ethereum instead of just keeping a money in a bank in 2024. Like, I'll just take the U.S. currency in 2024 over the Ethereum today. I only know that because I've been getting emails from Coinbase. It's not great, Bob.
Yeah. Never thought you'd take that question and turn it into that, but okay. Let's see. Here's one on one of your favorites, Ezekiel Elliott. Hate seems like it's over the moon. What do you think about Ezekiel Elliott, Shane? Buy, sell? What do you like him? What?
I need to just put this out there as a human being. I think he's a total trash, just a total trash. He looks like an Ewok, and I can't stand him partly because he's a cowboy. If he was an Eagle, I'd probably like him a lot better. But for as much hate as he's getting, I wouldn't mind him on my roster as my second running back. If I'm feeling frisky, more like my third running back, I'll buy him. You know, look, he's one of those guys that I probably think that I could get for a couple 2023 seconds in season when people are getting horny for the 2023 first and they can't get them and they just move down to the next girl on the list and go, she's not as hot, but she's got a great personality. So that's what I'm going to do.
Yeah, I think he is an ideal like RB2, especially if I'm living dangerously and I just want like two running backs I can go into the season with and then backfill with a bunch of bodies, which is typically my approach. We did have another question on that, so I'll get to that question in a second. But yeah, I mean, I actually was in a league and I was trying to spam Zeke and sell Zeke, and I was trying to get, guess what, 24 first, all declines. So maybe that's league to league. Maybe that'll actually change when we get to the season. Like you said, nobody's interested in moving future picks, even 24s right now for a guy like Zeke. But once we get to the season, he could go out week one and score 22 points, and all of a sudden I get two offers for 24 first. So I do think that he's kind of the player that you need to kind of wait and see. Has anything changed? Has he looked any worse than he did last year? Because he's probably not worth any first at this point until somebody has a reason to buy back in. So I think that's an interesting one. But I think he's the perfect pivot down option if you're trying to get off of somebody like Cam Akers or J.K. Dobbins or someone like that. Like, I don't mind a deal where I'm getting like maybe a receiver and Zeke just to fill that placeholder, because any guy that you see as maybe an RB2 that actually has more market value, I think he's a good swap in. But let me ask you this. Pick the running back that you like that's maybe in that dead zone or that has limited ceiling, but you like a lot better than Zeke. So you like David Montgomery. I know you like David Montgomery. If you have Zeke and I have Montgomery, realistically, what are you adding to make that swap on top of Zeke? I mean, you wouldn't even give me a second, I wouldn't think, would you?
I'd move a second.
Okay, then we probably have a deal, because I'd be like, that's a free second in my opinion. Yeah. They're both year to year. So, all right, here was another one. Jeff asks, half PPR. I assume Superflex, but it doesn't matter because there's no quarterbacks or picks. Eli Mitchell, Trey Sermon, DJ Chark for Alvin Kamara, Tony Jones. Where you at?
Man, it feels like the risk is really on the Mitchell side, but it's kind of on the Kamara side, right? I mean, he's the old running back that's going to go to prison. That's going to miss some amount of games last year. Eli Mitchell could also be wiped off the face of the earth in any minute because he's a San Francisco running back. But I'm going to go off what I saw last year. I think San Francisco likes him a lot. I think I'm going to hold the Eli Mitchell side. I really don't care about Sermon or Chark.
I actually think Chark. I do think Chark has some sneaky appeal this year. I don't think he's a wide receiver too, but I think he's usable. And yeah, Sermon and Tony Jones are basically, they just cancel each other out. So yeah. I think it's definitely a pivot off of Kamara, especially if you're maybe a little worried about Kamara getting suspended, missing some time. I don't hate it.
But if you want to pivot off Kamara, this is probably the type of deal you're going to have to make. You're not going to make a deal for, Kamara for DeAndre Swift. Like that, those days are gone. You're going to have to take a little risk on your side. which, you know, like I said, for me, I'm fine with Eli Mitchell after what I saw last year, but I could be completely wrong. And by week 3, he could be backing up Jeff Wilson still there? Jeff Wilson.
Yep.
Yeah.
Jeff Wilson's still there. So similar vein, I won't even New York Fight Exchange. Cool name. Cool name. So he asked moving aging running backs. What do you do? Because I think people have caught up. I don't think you can go out and trade aging running backs, at least right now, or at least throughout the rest of the summer, and get what they're worth to your team, especially if you're within like the type of build that you want to have. So I look at a lot of teams where I'm holding like Eckler or Kamara or someone like that. I probably don't have an excess at running backs already. Like I probably only have one or two that I feel like are super, super reliable in terms of being like top 20 guys. So like I'm not really trying to shop them, but what would be the point where you would say, okay, if I have extras, what would you be looking to do with them right now? Would you be trying to move them, or are you waiting until the season gets here?
No, I'm waiting until point scoring season. All right, let me rephrase that. I'm waiting until people start setting lineups and knowing that they're real. So, you know, what, late August, people start looking at their lineups and going, all right, well, I got to set it. And they realize I have Tony Jones and Seth Abrams or Abram Smith or whatever his name is as my starting running backs. Or, you know, like me, you look at my running backs and I'm like, oh, I got Boston Scott and Kenny Gainwell. So awesome. Same team and all. That's great. Great job, Shane. And then I'd start looking to move those elderly running backs. The only reason I don't like waiting until the season is because of the risk of injury. And once, you know, obviously once they get hurt, they're done. Like they're not young running backs. It's not a case where like Travis Etienne, who we were talking about last night or the night before, I don't remember, somewhere. We talk a lot, where Travis Etienne didn't lose any value over a year after destroying his foot. If Eckler goes out there, destroys his foot in week 1, and he's done for the year, his value is going to plummet.
Got another trade. Shout out Kyle Senra. Gave up a 104, 223 first, and a second. Justin Jefferson and Evan Ingram. Now it's a start 10. It's a decent capital for Justin Jefferson. Probably the equivalent of like 3.5, 4 first, I would say. Close to it. What do you think about that? Too much to pay right now? Like that's a big commitment. That could go way south if something were to happen to Jefferson. What do you think?
Oh man, I'd like it more in start 9 and start 10. This is going to be all about what other assets I have on my team. Did I just shoot all my asset load on Justin Jefferson?
I assume he's probably pretty good, and that was like the one move that he thought turned his team to like dominant, you know.
Generally you're not doing that if you're like, oh, I think I'm 2 years away. This is all right. I want to just go beat everyone to death, and this is the final move that's going to do it. You know me, I'll pay up. I'll pay up when I want to get my guy. Oh man, I don't know if I could do this. I gotta be honest with you, I don't know.
I mean, that's the allure of the 23 first, having those in your pocket. And how many times have we talked about the idea is not to pick 3 players with the 104 and the 23 first to try to equal Justin Jefferson. It is what better deal might come along where I can turn one of those 23 first and something else into something close to Jefferson and still pocket the other one. It's like having your cake and eating it too. You know, it's a big trade. I think in a vacuum, a lot of people would take Jefferson in a start 10, but it's more about, you have to think about the timing of when you make these trades. And it's not necessarily what you got back. It's what did you give up in the future that you don't even know you had yet. You know what I mean? What opportunities have you passed up where, I mean, how many times have you seen in the league, Shane, where you've kind of already given away a lot of your leverage, and then in the season, somebody goes, I hate my team. I only have 1 or 2 good players. Best offer for, Jamar Chase gets him. And then someone gets him for 223 first. And you're like, man, I wish I would have done that and just picked that 104. You know what I mean? Like that kind of thing could happen. And then you have nothing. You have nothing you don't even make an offer because you don't have any picks.
And you can't. And you just keep going and you keep staring at the page trying to figure out a way to make this work. Well, if I give him a 24, if I could get the commish to allow us to let go of the 25 picks, then I could give him 420, 4 first for the next 6 years, maybe. Yeah, the more I look at it, Kyle, I love you. This is one of those moves I'll definitely make for a quarterback and not think twice in Superflex. For Justin, I like him, but I'd probably try to attach one of those first to another wide receiver and see where I could get to. I get it. I'm sure this is a contender.
Now, say nothing has changed. Do you make this move 2 weeks before the start of the season? knowing kind of everything that has shaken out. Jefferson has not blown his ACL in the preseason. You know what I mean?
Well,
Like,
no, because I'm not assuming an injury anyway. I'm assuming even with this, I'm assuming Evan Ingram is going to be a top 12 tight end. I'm just going to assume that. I do like that he got Evan Ingram
yeah, it's a nice,
thrown in
that
there.
kind of neutralizes probably close to the second rounder. I can see that.
Yeah.
But so it's really just about the timing. It's literally about the cost that, or the potential value that you pass up that you don't even know you have a chance to get yet until maybe you had other opportunities that you just can't even make an offer on in the future. Mark, shout out to Mark. He said, I got 323 first for JT. Don't even care where they're at. Love that. Love that. That's almost like the dream deal these days with the market with running back, right? Like any running back, you can get three firsts in a powerful class. Take it.
Yeah, Pete Lawrence just did it, and Pete Lawrence just did a mock over the 2022 and 2023 classes. I think and it just listed down the names down there in the 23 class. It's a really strong class. I mean, even in a weak class, 3 firsts is pretty much hard to pass up. But yeah, 3 firsts for a running back, you won.
Yeah, and I think the other thing that we haven't really talked about much, but I'm sure this will come up as we get closer to the season, is that you now have 323 firsts, right? And I've done a little research on it. I have to probably double check the math to see what it's going to look like once we start projecting the tiers. But like once you've gotten 4 firsts or so in a class, I assume he may even have his first too. So now he has 4, right? Like he has actually more value than 4 firsts because there's a pretty good chance that he's going to be able to kind of squeeze someone else out of the tiers there. You know what I mean? Like if he has the 102, the 104, the 106, he controls a lot of that top 6 in terms of like he can maybe look at, maybe there's the team at the 105 that's desperate for a quarterback. He can be the one that's like, dude, I have 2 shots before you. Maybe I don't even need a quarterback, but I have 2 shots before you. So if you really want to lock one up, you may need to come up from the 105 to the 102 or the 104 and deal with me, you know? So you kind of control the board a little bit more when you have multiple picks. So like I would rather have, say I'm in 30 leagues, I would rather have 60 firsts in 30 leagues, but I'd rather have multiple firsts in like 20 of them. You know what I mean? Like I'd rather have 3 firsts in 20 of my leagues and then 10 of my leagues I don't have any versus just having 1 or 2 in every league, if that makes sense. Like I want to have some drafts where like I can just completely get out and punt because I'm kind of playing the other way going, man, Shane has 5 firsts in that league. The way I beat Shane is to kind of fade the 23 class. But in another league, I'm going all in on it. I want 5 picks in one draft. So it's kind of like you're using your leverage within each league to kind of pivot when somebody else is going the other way. Here was another one. Doak Walker, nice name. 12 team or 10 team Superflex. Do you like getting the seconds? Just given that there's 2 less players, like the tiers may go to the, mid second. So is it? Do you value seconds more in that type of league?
Yeah, because 2 of them are technically really first rounders.
Right.
So definitely, yeah, that they're definitely worth getting. I think when me and Scott talk, we're talking in terms of 12, 14 teams, 16 teams, where people are looking at like seconds, like, oh, well, next year's class is better, so that means the seconds are automatically going to be first, and it doesn't really work like that. In this specific instance, though, in a 10 team, well, 2 of those are actually first round draft picks in the majority of the league, so I would do that. Yeah.
Yep. And then for the esteemed Doak Walker, who's come back to life and graced us on this show, he asked 103. I assume this is a 12 team. If it's not, then we'll have to readjust. But 103, but he only gets a 23 second and a 24 first.
No. 24 is too far away for me to do that.
Yep. Can't argue with it. We had some questions from the Twitters. You want to go there real quick?
Yeah. There's some sharp questions there that you're going to have to answer, and I'll just nod approvingly.
We'll read them off while I'm pulling up the thread. Let's see. Trying to find my tweet. Let me find it. Come on,
I got it up.
Yeah, read them off. I'll find it.
Yeah, I'll be the reader. That's what I'm good at right here. Let's make sure I'm not on mute. Not on mute. Awesome. All right, here's a good one. Any general thoughts on during a rebuild in a league where draft order is determined by reverse max points for, how to balance liquidating assets to ensure higher draft pick and increasing value versus the idea that so much can change during a season that just making the playoffs can lead to a title?
So basically, I'm reading this as lowest potential points is going to get the highest picks. And how do you balance liquidating assets, getting points off your roster? Is how I'm reading it.
That's how I'm taking it.
Let me just make sure I'm getting it one time. Reverse max points for. Yeah, that's a tongue twister. Literally,
Okay.
take a break and read it. Reverse max point. I'm assuming it's potential points the other way. So it's the balance of getting rid of points off your roster versus. But that wouldn't make sense if you're in a rebuild. You're fine getting the points. It helps you both ways, right?
Yeah, if you're in a rebuild, I mean, the way the question's worded, he's in a rebuild but thinks he might make the playoffs.
Well, max points for would be basically who scored the most points. Reverse max points for, I'm reading as who scored the least points. So it's not even potential points. It's just least points scored. So how to balance liquidating assets to ensure a higher draft pick, and then positive value, the idea that so much can change during a season that just making the playoffs can lead to a title. So I think maybe the way that I would look at it would be you have a team that that scoring the least number of points is going to help you get a better draft pick. But it's not necessarily a team where your goal is to score the least number of points. It isn't just I'm cutting everything off my team, like trading for injured players or trading for prospects that aren't playing yet. You know what I mean? Like you're trying to balance both. I mean, I'm sure you've been in that situation before where like you're not sure if you're a contender, but you also are 2 games away from the playoffs and you're not going to just punt. You're gonna run it up until basically you're not going to be able to make it. You're not just going to give up.
Well, that's the thing. So the season's going to pretty much dictate how that goes, right? Your season's going to dictate if you're playing for the playoffs or not, or if you should put more assets into it. What's going to be interesting this year, then going back to it, is the 23 class. If I'm a guy looking at the 5 or 6 seed or a lady, I don't know that I'm going to. Usually, my motto is, well, F it. I'm going to try to get into the playoffs and see what happens, and sell my capital for next year. I don't know that I'm going to do that this year. Not with picks, maybe younger players, but definitely not with picks.
Yeah, I think if it's not potential points and it's just points scored, that basically means that it's going to be based on the lineups that you set. So there is probably going to be more of a have or have not factor to it, meaning like there's going to be teams that are going to just set, I don't want to say tanking lineups, but you've seen it where people just set a lineup where they're not necessarily trying to score the most points, but they're operating within whatever the bylaws say. Like, hey, you have to start active players, but you started, Randall Cobb over T. Higgins, something like that. And it's technically not tanking, but looking at the bylaws. So I guess my answer would be if I have one of those teams, I'm kind of trying to operate on the slimmest of margins possible. But again, it just comes down to your starting lineup. So I think we have to get some clarification from this question. The person that asked this question is it potential points or is it points scored? Because if it's just points scored, you can
Right.
essentially just say it's going to come down to if my lineup scores the most points. You know what I mean? Like you could probably slim down some of your depth and bank on the fact that, I have a slimmer margin to actually contend, meaning like normally I'd carry X amount of depth, maybe like 50% capacity based on my roster. So if I have start 10, I want like 15 core players. But if I'm not really sure I can win, maybe I can cut that down to like 12 or 13 and maybe pick up an extra first or something like that, just to hedge my bets that maybe my team kind of goes into a mini retool. But if it's just points for, it doesn't matter. It's whatever your starting lineup scores. You know what I mean? So I think there is a strategy if it's points for. If it's points for versus potential points, you have to treat it differently. If it's potential points, I'm all about trying to cut out some of the bench points because that's what's making my pick worse. But I can still contend if I have a fairly strong like core of 5 or 6 players. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
I'm not going to gut my roster and make my potential points like as low as possible unless I'm just completely punting. So hopefully we answered it. If not, clarify. We'll talk about it on the next episode, whenever that is.
Here, this is one that we kind of talked a little bit before the show that I liked and you got excited about. Ever try and stack impact backups with future firsts from other teams? Example, owner, if the Barkley owners 23 first, I guess, owns 23 first and Breda.
Yeah, and I think there's a good example to use with Barkley, and then I think the one I asked you was Derrick Henry. Was basically we'll do it a very straightforward way for everyone to understand it. So let's say I have Derrick Henry, okay? You have a 23 first. You also have Hassan Haskins. If I could trade you and I don't think people would do this because we're talking 23 picks, but I think the idea is I trade you an asset, whether you own Derrick Henry or not. I get the backup and a 23 first. Because even if you're the Derrick Henry owner that drafted Hassan Haskins, and I want your 23 first and I want Hassan Haskins, by making that trade, by acquiring both pieces from you, whatever I traded you, it doesn't even have to be Derrick Henry. It can be anything you wanted for that pick, right? If you have Derrick Henry on your roster, I'm now doubling down on the bet that I just made against you. Because part of what's going to drive the value of your pick is probably the high-end players, especially the high-end running backs, like the person that's asking the question is giving the example of. So, like, I'm not asking for Derrick Henry. I'm just asking, give me your 23 first. Give me Hassan Haskins. I've now basically taken two potential outs. I'm rooting against Derrick Henry even more, right? Because it's going to help my pick that I just got from you. And it'll help that handcuff, right? If he were to get hurt, there's a chance I can flip the handcuff, whether it's to you or to somebody else. So I think just the idea is making bets or making trades where you have two outs that are kind of correlated with the same outcome. Does that make sense? I mean, that's the simplest way to put it. It doesn't even have to be running backs. It can basically be, it can be like, do you think Deshaun Watson's going to get suspended, Shane?
Yes.
Okay. So trading for the 23 first, just simply of the team that has Deshaun Watson, is a similar thing, right?
Right.
Because you've now bet against Deshaun Watson's outcome. And not even that you care if he gets suspended or not. You've bet against that outcome, or you bet for that outcome for him to get suspended, and it's going to help you with the pick as well. So you punish the other team and you help yourself with one event. And I think there's probably some smart thinking behind that. It's like it's like DFS principles, but taken into the dynasty and specifically trades. So
yeah, I actually love that question.
Yeah, good one. Let's see what else. We had a trade question.
Chat's burning up.
All right. Let me get back to the chat. Hold on. What'd you see in the chat? You've been following it. I've been looking at Twitter.
I don't know where we left off.
All right, I'll throw a quick trade question up. This should be easy. This is our boy Ridley Truther. All right, 12 team, 1 PPR Superflex. Debo. Okay. Yeah. It's already a guarantee. There's not even a question. Debo or a 23 first and Judy. I mean, that's about as smash as you get, right?
So the first and Judy. Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you.
Let's see. Another one. Oh, okay. My boy Eric in here calling us out. He asked us to call our shot. Pick one of these crowded backfields, Shane. He gave you some great options. Miami, New England, Houston, Philly, Atlanta, San Fran.
So I just wrote up New England last week for the DLF mailbag, and I want to touch that again because it hurt my head. Eagles. And I don't even think the Eagles are particularly that crowded, really. It's just Miles Sanders, Kenny Gainwell when Miles Sanders is injured and or fumbles away his job. And then Kennedy Brooks is going to be the undrafted free agent that we're all picking up about week 7. It's going to be a league winner for us.
Yeah. Well, I mean, okay, so
straightforward.
If you could have every one of these backfields, every player in the backfield, first from dynasty perspective, which one would you take? Which one do you think has the most like dynasty assets that if you could have them all, you'd want to play around with?
New England. I got Damian. Yeah, I got Damian Harris. I know who fantasy hates, but he's going to have a job somewhere next year as a starter. Then I got Ramondre Stevenson and Pierre Strong, who are probably going to be the two guys leading that backfield next year. And I got James White, who's going to be a pass catch receiving back in the league until he's about 50.
I mean, I think I'd go San Fran simply because I would have Elijah Mitchell and Davis Price. I think that's worth more having those two guys than the entire New England backfield. I see what you're saying.
Mitchell's giving you the strongest singular player. As a group, I'm going to take New England, and Miami's not even in this conversation right now.
Yeah, I think those would be where it would come down to. It would come down to San Fran and New England. Now, I think what he meant to ask was basically pick your guy from each one of these backfields. Fine. Like, who would you want if you had one player? And I mean, I'm going to answer it with a little bit of a cop-out answer. I would just pick the most valuable player and then deal with the rest there. But like Miami, who do you want? I guess we'll consider at cost, not who would you rather have. I think most of us would say Chase Edmonds, but who do you want at cost?
No, I want in any circumstance. I'm taking Sony Michel, who I love now.
So you would want Sony Michel straight up over Chase Edmonds?
Yes.
Oh, Shane, come on.
Yes. He's a better player. Did you not see the tweet? Sony Michel's got more rushing yards than Saquon Barkley in their careers.
Have you looked at the contracts they signed? Does that not matter to you? One got basically like peanuts and one got a starter contract?
It does matter, except that they're going into the San Francisco scheme where draft capital doesn't matter. It doesn't. Contracts don't matter. Once they get on the field, it's all about who's playing better, who's helping the team win more. And Sony Michel's just a better all-around running back than Chase Edmonds, who's a very nice ancillary piece.
All right, so Miami, I say Chase Edmonds. Shane says Sony Michel. New England, pick one. Who would you rather have? In Dynasty, if you could have one right now, who would it be?
I'm going to take Pierre Strong. He's going to wipe them all out. Yeah.
Speechless. I was thinking Pierre Strong. I was thinking you were going to say Ramondre, and then I'll just
no. Ramondre's going to be on the bench by about week 6 when he fumbles again or misses another block and gets Mac Jones decapitated. So it's definitely Pierre Strong.
So if you're in a startup draft and you have to pick a New England back and they're all there, you're taking Pierre Strong first of the 4?
Yeah, and I'm also going to get to do it at the 3rd. Like the other 2 will go off the board, though. So I'll be lucky because Harris and Ramondre Stevenson will already be off the board.
Texans, I think this is probably easy. I think we're both taking Pierce, no doubt.
No love for Burkhead, I guess. Yeah, not even a question.
I mean, I actually think Pierce is a sell, but if I had to pick which one, I mean, I'm going to take him to be the best asset in the backfield, but he's the only one anyone really wants. So if I had to have one on my roster, it would be him. Eagles, I think it's still probably Miles Sanders, but you already mentioned Kennedy Brooks. I mean, I kind of want with the Eagles, and I want to get your thoughts because you're a fan. I kind of want as many pieces of this backfield as I can get. I want some Boston Scott for nothing. I want some Kenneth Gainwell for nothing. You know what I mean? Like, I'm willing to trade him if you're willing to give me like thirds, but if I can get him cheaper than that or as throw-ins, this is one of the backfields. I kind of just want all of them. I think this is going to be one of the better running games in the league. You know what I mean? So I want all pieces of all of them, but I would definitely take Miles Sanders first.
Yeah, given choice of all of them, Miles Sanders first, because look, as much as I've been trashing him, he's still one of the most talented players in the league. It's just he has to actually put it together, which is a different thing. Has to, stop getting injured and fumble and running out of bounds when they're running out the clock and things like that. Pure talent-wise, though, I mean, he could smash this year if he puts it together. Like I'm talking top 5 running back easy. Kennedy Brooks is my favorite UDFA running back. Boston Scott is going to have a place on any of my rosters for the rest of his life. And Kenny Gainwell, as much as I didn't like him as much when the Eagles drafted him, I see a role for him. I see maybe not Nyheim Hines at his peak, but maybe Nyheim Hines light. And the Eagles, they seem to like him, even though they went away from him for a little bit last year.
Well, they've liked him. They've given him multiple chances already. They brought back Boston Scott. They gave Kennedy Brooks a lot of money. Do you think that this is a much shorter leash than years past for Miles Sanders in terms of continuing to go back to him? Like if he gets hurt first quarter of the first game, like is there a chance they may just never go back to him as full as they did before?
I mean, yeah, and part of it is based off his history. They know he's going to be injured, right? If you just look at his history, he hasn't played more than 6 games in a row in his career, which is almost impressive if it wasn't so bad. And they know that, I love Miles Sanders. He's probably going to end up doing something really stupid during the game, like cutting the wrong way when Jason Kelsey's got like a wide open lane for you trying to get you a touchdown. It's going to happen. And if it does, they're going to go, well, we got one of these other 3 guys that can step right in, and we're comfortable with all of them.
Falcons, Cordero, Damian Williams, Tyler Algier, Quadri Allison. Who you want?
Algier, because he's got the most, buzz. And then I can flip him as soon as he runs for 100 yards, even though 67 of it came on a completely wide open lane up the gut that no one really noticed.
Yeah, it's interesting because Shane has answered, let's see, you've answered Pierre Strong, you've answered Damian Pierce, and you've answered Tyler Algier. Now, we don't know if any of those guys are any good, but I think you can kind of do the same thing we talked about on the Twitter question about kind of hedging your bets. You know what I mean? You could literally go and trade Damian Pierce for a second and Marlon Mack. You're betting on Marlon Mack and you're doubling down on Marlon Mack because you just traded away the guy that he probably has to beat out. So like that kind of thinking makes you a better dynasty player. It could burn up in your face and you just traded away, the next Aaron Jones and Damian Pierce, and you're kicking yourself because it's like I traded away a guy that's worth a first-round pick plus next year. But I think that kind of thinking makes you a better player. Niners, I assume it's still Mitchell, but where are you at on that backfield?
Oh, yeah, Mitchell by far. By far.
You're not into the TDB hype?
No, it's fun. But Mitchell, I mean, like I said last year, towards the end of the season, when they started using Mitchell in the passing game too, that really made me happy. And the fact that they just kept going back to him. He was injured like 36 times last year, and every time he came back, there was no doubt about it. It was his backfield. It wasn't like the olden days when they had McKinnon, Mostert, and some other dudes that you never heard of, where they'd keep rotating guys. It was, Mitchell came back. It's his backfield. Everyone else skedaddle, please.
Yeah. Kind of reminded me of Chris Carson, when he kept getting hurt early in his career. It's like,
Right.
dude, he's fighting for his life to keep this backfield. And once he has a couple of years of securing it, then, maybe he'll make some more business decisions, But the first year or two, like, if he can walk, he's getting back out on the field and only missing a little bit of time.
But we were incorrect. He continued not to make good business decisions and just ran through people. But hey, you got a second contract, so good for him.
Let's see. Good question from Reese Chapman. 12-team Superflex, half PPR, tight end premium, 30-man rosters. So pretty chalk. 3 receivers, 2 flexes. How many wide receivers do you want that rank inside the cutoff? This is one of my wide receiver threshold questions where you have to do a little math. What would be your thoughts? And then I'll give mine.
I mean, it's probably better served to have you. I am so heavy at running back anymore, though. It's hilarious because I look at my rosters. They're not good. It's just that there's 15 of them. And then there's like 6 to 7 wide receivers. Partly because I don't want to have to choose because I can't figure out which wide receiver to start when they're all the same guy. So I don't know. I'd probably go in 7 wide receivers at max.
You're close. So historically, the receivers are flexed. I mean, it's right around like a 2/3 rate in terms of flexing receivers. So basically, the majority says you want to flex a receiver when you can, right? So you can start 3, 2 flexes. Basically means the optimal play is to play 5 every single week. And then you probably want to have at least 50% or more covered. So I would say the sweet spot would be like 8. And I want to try to have those 8 inside the top. Obviously, if you have a 12-team league, 3 receivers, 2 flexes, that's 12 across the league, 5 slots, right? So that's 60. I kind of want to be on the high end. Like, I don't want those 8 to be wide receiver 50 to 60. You know what I mean? Like, I want to have a mix of maybe a tier 1, a couple tier 2s, a bunch of tier 3s, maybe 1 or 2 tier 4s, but I want them all to fall within that threshold. So call it, to err on being on the higher end of it, call it 8 top 50 receivers-ish. And that doesn't have to be 8 top 50 dynasty receivers. You can throw in 1 Adam Thielen in there, for a short period of time, he's going to be a top probably 36 receiver. But dynasty, he's not really a top 50 receiver, at least not like right now during the offseason. But that's my strategy. Like once I have those 8, I don't stray. Now I may have to replace those year to year. I may get to next year and it's like, dude, I don't really consider Adam Thielen there anymore. So I need to backfill with maybe 1 or 2 more. But the idea is I'm always focusing on that like core of what you said, like 7 to 8 to maybe 9. Once I get up above that 8, that's where I'm able to trade with my excess. You know what I mean? That's where I'm able to look at my team and go, wow, I've accumulated 10 receivers this year that are in that range. I can trade 1 away. I can push that receiver to some future capital. Give me a first to hold because I'm still within my threshold. And then it does what you talked about too, Shane. If I'm only allocating 8 or so roster spots to receivers and they're all inside the top 50, I now have literally half my roster spots I can allocate to running backs, which means I can be weaker probably at my RB2 spot, but most likely at my depth spot. I can literally roster 10 extra running backs if I have my wide receivers dialed in. If I have my tight ends dialed in, I don't want to be if it's a start 1.5 PPR, I don't want 7 tight ends on my roster. You know what I mean? I don't want to be carrying like the random Adam Troutman or Gerald Everett or, you know what I mean? I don't want 5 of those guys. I never want to flex them. I always want to be pulling my flexes from my wide receivers or from my running backs that are spot starts. That's it. So like, give me like 2 or 3 tight ends. Give me like a developmental one and then give me like a platoon with my 2 starters. That's it. Then hopefully we have a couple of elite quarterbacks, maybe a third. But what's that? That's 8 receivers, 3 tight ends, 3 quarterbacks. That's 14 players. Guess where those other 16 roster spots are going, Shane? Running backs,
Mm-hmm.
And it allows me to constantly be cycling in and out of my running backs. Like, hey, I don't need to carry a bunch of volatile old running backs on my team. If I have one, you can get 2 first for, you just do it. And you stay within that construction. So it's a good question. I think that's important to know that. And obviously it changes. It changes if that's 22-man rosters, Or it changes if that's 35-man rosters in a 10-team taxi. Well, of course, you're going to probably carry some tight ends and some receivers in your taxi because you have to carry somebody. So you have to know those calculations, I think, before you build your team. Easy one. Colby Rogers, James Robinson and Debo, or Cam Akers and Sky Moore. What's with the Debo questions? Is he really that valuable, Shane? Like, to me, this is a slam dunk.
Everyone is trying to get out of Debo because no one believes that
But
Debo's going to be able to
who's actually paying a premium of like 2 starters for him like this? I don't see that at all.
I haven't seen it. I've tried it. Although I had to get creative and do 2024. Like I got Treylon Burks and the 2024 first for Debo.
I love that. I love that. That's a great deal.
I thought it was a 23 first, so don't be too impressed. I just checked the wrong box. But when the trade went through, I was still happy with the return. Yeah, I'll take Cameron and Sky Moore here.
Yeah, I think that I don't have any Debo, but I haven't seen where like he's one of those guys that people. I think there's other receivers in the same range that I think many more people would overpay for than him. You know?
Yeah, nobody believes in him. Literally, no one believes in him. If he's on your roster, you're kind of gonna have to just live with him being on your roster and hope that last year wasn't an anomaly, and then you'll have the last laugh on everyone.
Here's one. Michael Creech, would you overpay for another team's assets if you already hold their 23 first? Kind of the same thing. You're doubling down on the bet, right? If I can take a good player from you and you're worse and I hold your pick. You ever done that before?
Yeah. I mainly because I attack the same people over and over again, or not attack, but like I like trading with the same people over and over again because I know they're active at least. You know what I mean? So it ends up a lot of leagues where it's just the same 7 guys or girls just keep trading with each other. And that's one of those things you can look at. And definitely I'm sending not any players like picks. Only players they'll get from me, obviously, are injured ones that are IR'd.
So let's say you're in the other side where they have your 23 first and they come to you and want to buy your vets. Are you willing to play ball with them, or are you going to make them overpay to make the first that they're already holding better?
I honestly, at that point, I'm just going to look at my roster and see what works best for me and not even try to figure out like the equation there. Like, oh, do I make them overpay? Like if they have my first, I got a feeling I'm going to be bad no matter what in this scenario.
Do you beg to get your own first back?
Well, that's always the first move you're going to try to get back, right? I mean, that's the first thing you're always going to try to do is like, all right, well, I'll give you can have Justin Jefferson, but I need my first. I need that 24 first, and I need CD Lamb back and see how that goes.
Yeah, I think that's a tough spot to be in when someone else has your 23 first, but then you're also trying to sell win-not players because, of course, they're going to come calling because they're almost willing to think, well, even if I quote-unquote overpay according to a trade calculator, I'm actually getting something back.
Yeah.
Because you're harming your own pick, which is helping me. So that if you can put it this way, if you can get another team into that situation, then I think that's where you can really make some profit, right? Like if I'm holding Shane's first, but I already know I have a better team than Shane, then he's in trouble, because I'm going to come to him and go, hey, you want to trade? You want to gut your roster? And I'll give you really anything you want, but I'm holding that 23 first. You're not getting your 23 first back.
So it's a rough spot to be in when someone else has your first. You have no control over it whatsoever. It's fine if your team's, stacked. You don't care. It's the 110, whatever.
Yeah. Adam Baker, good 2 tight end question. Andrews and Schultz, who should you target as your 3rd tight end? Any thoughts? I'd go Parham of these 2, but they're kind of the same thing. They're probably backups on. Yeah, I'd go Parham just for his offense. I'd rather have Herbert than Lawrence.
We're still dreaming that Parham might have some upside.
Parham, my understanding is he is going to be a part-time player. He's a receiving specialist. Right. I'd rather have Everett, but I do think Parham's going to have. He's going to have a couple of spike games, probably like 2 touchdown games, but that's it. He's not really. I'd shoot for a different tight end, but if I had to pick between the 2, it would be him.
And Danny Arnold, he had a really good year last year, but he was being hyper targeted just to be inside the top 12. I can't imagine any offense on the face of this earth will ever hyper target him again on purpose. Not in the NFL, at least.
Yep. Quick start 9, 1 QB. So pretty vanilla, but a couple trades here asked by Casey. No. Jefferson for 102, 202, and 23 first. No, I would not do that in start 9, 1 QB. Give me Jefferson. I think I'd take the Elijah Moore 23 first on the other side, wouldn't you?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
I think.
Look, definitely. I mean, look, Elijah Moore and Waddle are both in the same situation, except that Waddle's is even worse because he's got an actual proven vet that just came in to eat into a snap share. Yeah, but and then that 23 first, baby.
Paul, 8-teamer, but it's only start 2 running backs. Fairly shallow, so only, what would that be, 12 starters. So 8 teams start 12. That's the equivalent of like 12 teams start 8, so still really shallow. But Carson and Patterson is an RB2. Kenneth Walker's a smash 102 in that format. Give me the running back. I'm not worried about receivers.
Yeah, I mean, you could start 6 running backs. I mean, not that you ever would, but
But he needs a running back. He needs an RB2. You know what I
with
mean? Like
Carson
that's
and Patterson, yeah.
yeah,
You can't
yeah.
put them together and make an RB7. So definitely, yeah, I'm getting Kenneth Walker there.
And I think the reason I put it up there was that when you're talking about a shallower format like this, I'm always going to lean towards the running backs. I'm not going to bother trying to hit on receivers. Even if I miss on a couple of receivers, if you miss on a receiver in a league like this, it's like FFPC, right? We talk about FFPC a lot. You can't really take rookie receivers because if they end up being Kadarius Toney or Rondale Moore or Terrace Marshall, like they don't even make your team next year.
Yep, they're gone the next
They
year.
get caught. Whereas at least if I draft Damian Pierce, the worst thing that he's probably is Darrell Henderson or Alexander Madison. You know what I mean? Like he's still going to be worth holding in that format versus a receiver that doesn't hit. So
Yeah,
I
and
just
you
like
know
to
that
prefer
just
running
from
backs.
looking at the FFPC waivers, you could find literally starting wide receivers just dotting the waivers when backup running backs are still off the board. You're like, oh, okay.
Yep. One more. I'm a bad person. So no, you're not. You ask a question on Manic and Chill, so we'll give you some credit.
Yeah.
Start 2 running backs. So okay, this is a good one because this guy is definitely overweight at running backs. I mean, he's got Saquon, CMC, Javonte, and Swift. But it's only 1 QB start. I don't know how many total starters, it doesn't say, but only a 10-team league, 1 QB. So like, is this one where you would trade Swift for Chase or something like that? Or you know what I mean? Like, or Swift traded 2 for 1, given how shallow it is?
You're not getting Swift for Chase. We know that. But
So Swift and a first for Chase type thing.
I'll
Even
tell
though
you
it's half
what,
PPR, would you just roll with all the running backs?
I'm trying to get, you know me, I'm trying to, if I can get CMC and Saquon off my roster and I add them to one of these wide receivers, it's not going to be Brandon Cooks. But I bet you if I could add CMC to Metcalf, I could probably get something really sexy. Saquon and more. I'm not going to move Deontay. He's not going anywhere. But yeah, no, I'd attach one of these old running backs. I know that the younger running backs are more valuable, but I think they also hold more production value than CMC and Saquon are going to give you next year too.
Well, it's like what we talked about earlier with the wide receiver threshold. When you're in a league like this where it's only half PPR, which means the flex rate is not going to be as high. It's not 66%. It's probably under 50, actually, if you look at like half PPR. And it's a shallower league too. And it's only a 10-team league. So like, I'm not necessarily as interested in wide receiver 3s. I'm constantly looking to color up, so if I can go out and attack even like CeeDee Lamb, as much as he might be overvalued, that is a guy that is probably outside of Chase and Jefferson. Him, Cooper Kupp, Stephon Diggs, like those are probably the 3 guys that I could see having like a smash season. You know what I mean? If everything broke right. But that's what I'm chasing here. I don't care about Brandon Cooks or Elijah Moore necessarily in this type of league. So I'm with Shane. If you can add, and wouldn't you say you'd almost put any of the running backs up to get one of those receivers? Like,
yeah, at the end of the day, I'd give up any one of them.
Yeah, like
that's not where I'm starting, but yeah.
Yeah, if I already have CMC and Saquon and I can't get anything for them, but the person is willing to give me, I don't know, Diggs plus for Javonte Williams, like, okay, I'll just do that. You know what I mean? I'll just bet against the one that I'm willing to trade away. One more, Joe. Attacking tight ends this year. He has Robert Tonyan and Brevin Jordan. Random, Shane.
Brevin.
No,
Brevin.
Not wrong.
Brevin.
Wrong.
Brevin.
Wrong.
Brevin.
Not Brevin. Look at the RAS score. That's it. RAS score. RAS score and speed. As long as Tonyan gets back from his ACL, then I'm good. Give me him over Brevin Jordan 10 days a week. Any other Twitter questions you want to get to?
We got them all.
Oh, no, I wanted to get to this one. This was the very first post that Evan posted in the thread when we posted it on Twitter. So let me hide this one. It was Evan's comment about higher stakes players. And it doesn't even have to be high stakes players, but just what have you learned from people that don't make content, Shane? So we'll just keep it broad. Have you learned anything from people that do not create content, but you've seen them do stuff in leagues?
Well, no, because I learn everything from you. So
No, you don't. You haven't seen anything in a league where you know that person doesn't have a podcast or doesn't do YouTube videos or writes articles, and you
I
go,
mean, well, so
huh?
here's the thing with content creators, right? And I'm not going to be the first person that ever says this, but our buddy Zach, well, my buddy Zach, I don't know how you feel about him. My buddy Zach says this all the time, like stealing brilliance. Like most of what I write about is probably because I've seen it somewhere, right? I might not have written it down. I might not gonna have gone, oh, balls deep really made a great move there. You know what I mean? Or balls deep always seems to really swindle people this way. But it's one of those things where you notice it, then you try it, and then you keep doing it, and then you just go, you know, I should probably write about this because I didn't see anyone else write about this, so I'm going to write about it. Honestly, I don't, like I said, I haven't taken names down in leagues, but I do notice if I notice something, I do it all the time, even on a small scale level. I notice someone makes a good trade in my league, and it could be a trade that I didn't even think of a way of attacking it, where I've been just trying to throw players at something or throw picks at to get a player, and someone else has gone about it in a completely different way. They're like, no, well, I'll get Kadarius Toney in the 24th first, and I'll throw that at this guy and get, you know, the asset that you were trying to get. So I do notice all the time. It's not just content creators, especially not just content creators that have really good ideas. Everything I've ever thought of is probably stolen from someone else.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, I think there's value in somebody that can absorb. I mean, it's no joke that I listen to 40 podcasts a day and I'm up to 3 times speed. So I'm truly a degenerate. Now, how much of that am I retaining? Probably not as much as I would like. But the idea is all these ideas are constantly flowing through my brain. You know what I mean? And so part of what I promote, whatever you want to say, my brand, what I'm all about is trying to bring all that stuff together, kind of like the kitchen sink. You know what I mean? And articulate it to like an overall high arcing strategy where I can say, okay, these are some of the basic principles of how I play. It has nothing to do with I'm going to be able to draft players better than Shane, or I'm going to be able to make all these trades and nobody, like, I'm not the greatest trader in the world. I'm not the greatest talent evaluator in the world. It's coming up with things that I can apply on a large scale. And then you take it to your league and you go, okay, well, these are the basic principles I'm going to play. But then when I get to my league, I have to tweak it because I know my league better than you. And I can't just go to you and say, hey, get to know my league because I'm not in your league. You know, I don't have any relationships with the people that are in those leagues either. So like I can't really give you advice other than on a high level, this is what I would do. I would say what we talked about earlier in the show is one of the biggest takeaways. And that's what's made my game better over the last year or two is thinking about, first of all, acknowledging how much when it comes to dynasty, but also when it just comes to life, NFL, football, that we don't know. There is so much more that is random than we even appreciate. You know, we sit there and we think, oh, well, this is projected to happen, or this is what I think is going to happen. Yet we're estimating it sometimes with like such high confidence, we don't realize just how much variance there is. What could happen day to day that we're not even thinking about or accounting for. So I think embracing that and then also looking at it from a very wide lens of like, these are the range of outcomes that could happen. And then you zoom in and you go, okay, here's a trade that's in my inbox. I'm thinking about the different range of outcomes and how I can maximize how much money I'm getting in the pot, making this bet that I feel very confidently about. You know, I bring it all the way back to playing blackjack. Anyone that's played blackjack knows that is that is the best game to gamble on in terms of the odds being closest to 50-50, right? But the whole way to make money in blackjack is to get your money out when you don't have the odds and get as much on the table when you do. And that's dynasty. It's just not as linear as, hey, the dealer's showing a 6 and I have a queen. You know what I mean? I have 20 and the dealer's showing a 6. You know, it's not that easy. There's a lot of other factors that come into it. But I think that's what it comes down to is making bets that are in your favor. And when the bets aren't in your favor, go the other way. That's about as simple as I can make it. Long answer. Final thoughts, Shane?
I don't have final thoughts. I never have thoughts. No, just appreciate everyone jumping in the chat this afternoon. Short notice. Scott wanted to make sure I was actually awake before he put the tweet out there that we were going to be live streaming. So I appreciate everyone jumping in, giving us great questions because we didn't even think of a topic. We just said Q&A. We're going to rely on the people, and then people came with really awesome questions. So thank you all.
Yeah, and we got too many that we couldn't actually get to. We got some shout outs in the chat that people shouted us out. Next time we'll try to get to those. Appreciate everybody that attended. We had great viewership and great engagement. We'll do it again. If we can get this type of engagement, these types of questions, we could probably do a Q&A at least every other week. So let's plan for it.
Yeah, look, it's a good mix of strategy and then player specific stuff. I like that mix. You know what I mean? Just don't come to us for start sit because we're probably not the best for that.
No, Manic and Chill disappears whenever you have to
Yeah.
like set lineups and stuff like that. But no, we have kind of the dead period over the next 2 or 3 months where we can really dive into, boredom across dynasty leagues creates the ability to sit back and think. You know what I mean? Like, as much as I sit here and go, man, most of my rookie drafts are over, the season can't get here quick enough. I think this year one of my goals is to try to appreciate the next couple months where we have time. We have time to like actually sit back and discuss trades and roster construction and player values and ranges of outcomes and the bets that we want to make. Like, we have some time to digest it, because as soon as the season gets here, dude, it's just, it's the rat race. And now that we have games, like, by the time we get to 2 or 3 years down the road, the NFL is going to be playing games like 5 days a week. You know what I mean? Like, constantly on holidays. And so it's like, you don't get a break. You're in the grind, like setting lineups and all that stuff, literally every 2 or 3 days during the season. So once you get there, there's really no time to kind of sit back and strategize for, an hour or two and take questions like this. So we'll leave it at that. Next episode, maybe in a couple weeks.
Works for me.
All right. Oh, thanks for the DLF platform, at DL Football on Twitter. Shane at Shane is the worst. Myself at Charles Chill FFB. If you like us, if you like our content, we both have a Patreon, patreon.com/Dynasty and Chill, and patreon.com/ is it Dynasty Trades HQ?
Yeah.
Yeah. Check either one of those out and engage with us. Appreciate all the listeners and be chill. Say bye, Shane.
Bye, Shane.